Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass.net. This week we're going to have a look at the bass line from the song Let's Get It Started by the Black Eyed Peas. We'll have a look at the basic notes, then we'll take it apart a little to see how you can take away some of the chord tone concepts and apply them in your own lines. So the bass line sounds like this. 2, 3, 4. So before we begin, I'll just let you know that for the chord progression, we have the chords B minor, D major, G major, and then F sharp major. Okay? Now knowing that can be quite helpful in keeping track of where we are in the riff. And if you have any knowledge of chord tones or arpeggios, it makes this riff really easy to learn. So first of all, just try playing through the root notes of that chord progression, playing maybe 2 beats for each note, okay? So we would have B, D, G, and F sharp, okay? So B, 2nd fret of the A string, D, 5th fret of the A string, G, 3rd fret of the E string, and then F sharp, 2nd fret of the E string. So just 2 beats on each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just try that round and round for a little while just to get your bearings. Now let's work through all of the notes in there. So this is a 4-bar riff and it's split into 2 2-bar chunks. Okay, so work through the first 2 bars first, play it round and round, and then you'll find the second 2 bars a lot easier. So the first 2 bars sounds like this. Okay, so we begin with B, 2nd fret of the A string, then down to F sharp, 2nd fret of the E string, then back up to the B. Okay, so it's all on the 2nd fret there. So A string, E string, A string. Okay, then we work up to the C sharp, 4th fret of the A string, and then up to the D, the 5th fret of the A string. Then A, D, A. So 5th fret E string, 5th fret A string, and back to the 5th fret E string. So all centered around the 5th fret there. And remember that all of this is transcribed in the PDF over at talkingbass.net, so just follow the link in the info below. So B, F sharp, B, C sharp, D, A, D, A. Then we move down to the G, so 3rd fret of the E string, and then we just work up through a root 5th octave pattern and back. So we've got 3rd fret E string, then D, 5th fret A string, G, 5th fret D string, then D, 5th fret A string, and then we just shift that entire pattern down a fret. So we have F sharp, 2nd fret E string, C sharp, 4th fret A string, F sharp, 4th fret D string, and then back down to the C sharp, 4th fret of the A string. And that's that whole first chunk, okay? So, very slowly. Okay, now, a couple of things to be wary of here. First of all, you've got to play it pretty staccato. So, okay, so they're very broken, the notes. Detached, that is. So instead of playing, playing into each note, it's all broken. So for every time you play a note, fret the note, almost stabbing at it, and then just release the pressure. Don't take the finger right off, because you'll get that kind of noise. You just stab at it, keep the finger rested there, and then just, stab, okay? So. Okay? The other thing is the fingering, okay? So there's many, many different ways that you could finger this. I'm using the first finger for those for that 2nd fret there. So I'm just moving the first finger backwards and forwards. Then I'm using the third finger for the C sharp there at the fourth fret. Then when I get up to the fifth fret, well, I'm using the pinky, the fourth finger. You could shift the whole hand up and play that with the first finger if you want. It's completely up to you. Just for the efficiency of it, I'm just playing with the fourth finger there. If your fourth finger's not very strong, don't worry about it. Just move up with that first finger, okay? So, then when we get to the G, I'm using the first finger for the G on the E string there, third fret, and then I'm using the fourth finger, the pinky, for that fifth fret there, okay? And then exactly the same for the F sharp, so. So, that's the first two bars. Play round and round that until you get it under your fingers. Don't worry about playing to a metronome or anything like that, just get those notes under your fingers. Try it gradually, adding one note at a time until you get it down, okay? And remember, like I said, if you know the chord progression there, the B, D, G, F sharp, you can kind of keep your bearings there. You can kind of see where you're moving to. So next, we have the second two bars, which sound like this. So exactly the same chord progression, but the notes are as follows. So we have B, second fret of the A string, then we move up to the F sharp, fourth fret of the D string, then we shift up to the B, fourth fret of the G string, and then C sharp, sixth fret of the G string, and then the D, seventh fret of the G string. Then we come down, A, seventh fret of the D string, D, fifth fret of the A string, and then the A, fifth fret of the E string. And then we're back to the G and the F sharp that we had in the first riff. So if you've already nailed that, this will seem really, really straightforward. So G, third fret E string, D, fifth fret A string, G, fifth fret D string, and back, down to the D, and then down to the F sharp, second fret E string, C sharp, fourth fret A string, F sharp, fourth fret D string, and back to the C sharp, fourth fret A string. But like I say, we've already played through that in the first chunk. So, and that's the whole thing. Now, in terms of the fingering, again, there's several different ways you could do this, but I'm coming up, first finger for the B, fourth finger for the F sharp there, and then I'm shifting up with the first finger to take that high B there, fourth fret of the G string, and then, so then I'm just coming up with the first finger, third finger, fourth finger, leading up to the D, then I come down with the fourth finger onto the D string, and then the first finger on the A string and E string. And then I'm just back to the G and the F sharp as in the first chunk. So first finger, fourth finger. Okay, so that's the whole riff. So if we put it all together, we get the following. So even though that's a pretty straightforward riff working through a very simple two-bar chord progression, it can still take a bit of memorizing. So I would start very, very slowly, work through those first two bars, then work through the second two bars, and then put them together, okay? Once you've nailed that first two bars, you'll be able to see that we've got this B to D thing going on, which is why I said it's worth knowing that B, D, G, F cycle. And then you'll get used to seeing this G and F sharp root fifth octave pattern, okay? That is the same for both of them. So, you know, once you've got that first two bars off, it should be pretty easy to get off the second two bars. The only problem you'll have is when you work up, you've got to make that position shift, and it just can seem a little bit strange moving all the way up here and then coming down like this. But, you know, start very slowly and then just gradually build up speed. Now let's take this riff apart. Now it's a great little riff and it's a really good example of how you can create a solid, memorable and melodic repeating line outlining a chord progression. So let's start by looking at those chords again. We had B minor, D major, G major and F sharp major. So that's a very, very common chord progression in a minor key. So we have chord 1, then we have chord 3, then we have chord 6 and chord 5. Okay, so that chord flat 6 really moving down to chord 5 is, very, very common in minor keys. So that's what we have, chord 1, then that chord flat 3, chord flat 6, moving down into chord 5. So because we have the chord progression, it's really easy to analyze this riff. We just have to know the notes in those chords. We have to know the arpeggios. So very simple with this chord progression because we've only got 2 chords to think of. We've got a minor and then they're all major. So in case you've never worked through any of these arpeggios, let's just work through them. So we have B minor first of all. So there we have the B minor arpeggio. So we have B, D, F sharp. Okay, so it's a minor triad. So 2nd fret, 5th fret, A string, then 4th fret, D string. So that's the root, the flat 3 and the 5. That's a B minor arpeggio, and we can also put the B in on the top there, the 4th fret of the G string. Okay, and if we wanted to expand it even further, we could move down onto the 5th below on the F sharp. So we're taking that F sharp there at the 4th fret of the D string and just playing that an octave lower. So we're playing it down there at the 2nd fret of the E string, and that gives us all the notes of that B minor in that position. Okay, so that's B minor. So, if you've never seen a minor arpeggio before, that's a minor arpeggio. Just get used to playing it around. Just play it around the neck. Just get used to that finger pattern, and that's a minor arpeggio. Now for the major arpeggio, in case you've never seen that before, let's have a look at the D major. So again, root, major 3rd, perfect 5th in terms of the intervals. So we've got D, 5th fret of the A string, F sharp, 4th fret of the D string, then A, 7th fret of the D string. So it's a root note, then we move up to the major 3rd and then to the perfect 5th. And we can also put in the octave on the top. So that's the 7th fret of the G string, the D. And we can also play the 5th below, so that's the 5th fret of the E string, the A. Okay, so that's all the notes of D major in that area. So we now have B minor, D major, and then we have G major. So once again, we just take that same triad pattern there and we play it on the G. And again, we can expand by playing the G at the 5th fret of the D string, and then we could even put in the B up there, 4th fret of the G string. So that's all the notes of the G major arpeggio there, and then F sharp major, we just take that whole pattern and take it down a half step or a fret. Okay, so 2nd fret, E string, 1st fret, and then 4th fret on the A string, 4th fret D string, and then 3rd fret G string. Okay, so all of those arpeggios sounds like this. B minor, D major, G major, and F sharp major. And then we're back to B minor. Okay, so all of those arpeggios are transcribed and written in the PDF, the downloadable lesson material. Again, just follow the link in the info below. So once we have those arpeggios under our fingers and we know the intervals within them, so for every major arpeggio we know there's a root note, we know there's a major 3rd and there's a perfect 5th in there. And for the minor triad we know that there's a root note, there's a minor 3rd and a perfect 5th in there. We can start to analyze this bass line. So when we begin on the B, okay, we start on the B, that's the root note of the B minor. We drop down to the 5th. Okay, so that's the F sharp, and then back up. So we've got a root, 5th, root pattern there, both chord tones, okay? Then we have this C sharp, this 4th fret of the A string, and that's not a chord tone, okay? That's not in B minor. So that's a non-chord tone. And what we're doing here is we're playing a passing note or an approach note. You can, see it either way, but we're approaching the D major. So we've got B, we're approaching that D major chord. So you could see it as an approach, or you could see it as a passing note between B and D. Either way, it's just a melodic device. It's just, something that's moving towards that D, okay, for a smooth line. So now we're at the D. So now we have, so again, just root, 5th, root, 5th, both chord tones. So both of those notes are in the D major arpeggio. Then we move down to the G and the F sharp, and again, root, 5th, root, root, 5th, root, in terms of the intervals. So again, we're just outlining those chords with those chord tones. The root and the 5th are chord tones. They're within those chords there. Okay? So we've got a lot of root 5th movement going on here. The only thing that's different is that C sharp in there that we're using to join up the B and the D to make a nice smooth line, okay? Now let's move on to bars 3 and 4. So we start B and F sharp, so again, root 5th, then we're up to the root note, so again, all chord tones. Then we have a repeat of that C sharp that we played down here to join up to the D, okay? So again, we're just passing from the B up to the D to have a nice line connecting those chords. Then we come down to the 5th, the A, then we drop down to the root note, and then down to the 5th again. So again, it's all root and 5th movement. So that's all on a D major. Root, 5th, root, 5th. Then we're down to the G, root, 5th, root, 5th. Then down to the F sharp, root, 5th, root, 5th. Okay? So again, it's all root and 5th movement. There's no thirds in there at all. Okay? It's just roots and 5ths with that passing note between the B and the D. So once you break it up like that, you can see how simple this line actually is. If you're used to seeing root 5th movement, then learning this line is really, really simple. If you're not used to that and you don't know what any of that is, then it just looks like a load of random notes. It just looks like a linear line working through whatever. But if you are used to these intervals and you know that root 5th pattern and that root 5th pattern, it can be really, really quick to learn. And this is why I keep stressing that over and over again. Out of all the things that you can learn in terms of music theory and all this stuff, intervals are the best thing to learn, or the most useful thing to learn, because it's a visual pattern. You can see an interval pattern, and it's also got a sound to it. There's emotive value in those intervals, and intervals are the building blocks of music. Even the chords, the arpeggios, melodies, whatever it is all at its core built up from intervals. So intervals are your friend. So you can see with that riff just how much mileage we can get out of a root and a 5th. Just those two chord tones, root and 5th. It's a fairly sweeping line there, especially on that 3rd bar when we come up on the B minor. That moves up quite high and comes down again. A large sweeping line. And we've only got root, 5th, root, passing note, but then root, 5th, root, 5th. It's all root and 5th. So, just as a little bit of an experiment, just to diversify a little and show you how you can introduce some more chord tones, let's try adding the 3rd in there. So this is going to be the complete arpeggio for each of those chords. So, first of all, we've got the B minor. So, the B minor arpeggio, B, D, F sharp. So we could run up the arpeggio. Then, because we're up here on the G string, we could come up to this D up here. So we've got B, D, F sharp, B, D, 7th fret of the G string, and then we could come down that arpeggio. So then we come down to the A, 7th fret of the D string, F sharp, the 3rd in there, so that's the 4th fret of the D string, and then back to the D. So we've got, can Okay, so then we could play the G there, 5th fret of the D string, and come down that arpeggio. Okay, so we're just coming down that G major arpeggio, G, D, B, G, 5th fret, D string, 5th fret, A string, 2nd fret, A string, 3rd fret, E string, and then we could come up the F sharp. So F sharp, then A sharp, C sharp, and then the F sharp. So 2nd fret, E string, 1st fret, A string, 4th fret, A string, and then 4th fret, D string. Okay, so all together we have. Okay, so, it doesn't have the same sound as the line that we, from Let's Get It Started exactly, but you can still hear that chord progression in there. And this is really, really good practice, just trying to outline chords in this way. Take the notes of the arpeggio and then just run with them, just to outline that chord progression. And here, presto, you come up with another riff. And it sounds very, very classical in there now. If we compare it with the original line. Okay, so you can, again, both of them are just outlining that chord progression. Okay? These bass lines are a great introduction to jazz or blues walking bass lines. This method of outlining the chord tones through the progression is the basis for walking, but we generally improvise walking lines on the fly, and the feel's a little different. So if I was to just improvise a walking bass line through that same progression, you can hear the similarities. A 3, 4. So we're just outlining chord progressions by using chord tones. You can hear the chord progressions moving by as we weave a melodic line through it. This is the foundation of a lot of bass riffs, even if it doesn't seem that way at first. And this is why learning about chord tones can be so good for your overall bass playing and musicianship. So if you're interested in learning more about chord tones and how you can use them to turbo boost your bass playing and knowledge of the fingerboard, then just check out the Chord Tone Essentials course over at talkingbass.net by following the link in the info below. It's a huge course with over 8 hours of video lessons and over 120 pages of lesson material. You'll learn how to play over absolutely any chord or chord progression, how to play arpeggios and chord tones over the entire fingerboard, and you'll more importantly learn how to use those chord tones in your bass playing in a variety of styles, from rock to jazz to reggae to soul. So go check it out, and I'll see you later.